Okay, buongiorno, good morning. We are now starting with the panel on Music Moves Europe. But Europe is not moving to music because we miss one of the panelists. Unfortunately, the representative of the Commission has been involved in surgery, urgent surgery, and has to move to the hospital, and we hope that everything is safe. But anyway, the panel is going on, the music rock, and we are here to start the debate on the policies that Europe is promoting for helping music growth in the European Union. So the panel is a high-level panel. I start from Francesca Trainini, representing the Produttori Musicali Indipendenti from Italy and member of the board in Impala. Florian Druecke is the chairman of the German music industry organization, BVMI. And Guillaume LeBlanc is the head director general for SNEP, the French Music Industry Association. So just to start a little bit about our topic, I think it's working. Where I should put there? There? Ah, okay. Go back. And go back. No, there is somewhere where you should. Bah. Okay. So where we are with the program. As you can see here, Music Moves Europe is the framework for the European Commission initiatives and actions for in support of the music sector. We know from the experience that our industry has in the past that most of the fiscal and financial support from the European Union has been attributed to the movie industry, audiovisual sector in particular. The entire creative program is mainly focused on audiovisual, but there has been some development and improvement also in the area of music. And therefore, we can talk a little bit about this evolution. As you can see, Creative Europe, as I said, is the overall program for part of the media strategy of the Commission. And Music Moves Europe is part of this program and is designed for funding and cross-border support from the Commission, and will sorry, goes? No? There is a problem with somewhere. Understand where is the... Yeah? Okay, so in October we had an improvement with the program. The Parliament voted the budget that is approximately 2 million, and the Commission, as you can see, will now wait for concrete proposals. That was the reason why we have invited here the representative of the Commission. Unfortunately, he is not here, but anyway, all the report from this meeting will be sent to the Commission as the proposal that we have on the table in all the countries, not only France, Italy, and Germany. And so it's a timing now for presenting proposal to the Commission, because this process will then move forward in a short time. Where the money is going into is clearly shown on this slide. The initiative will be potentially around online distribution, INR, data, in particular big data, so this is very important now in the era of streaming, as you can imagine. Observatory for music, audience development, education, startups, and export. Export is another sensitive area for the music industry today in the global era of digital. The program will be published by the end of the year, and we know that a conference, big conference in Brussels will probably be organized beginning next year. Okay? Okay, seems that we make it. So, what is going on also in the countries represented here? Italy, for example, we recently have seen the approval of the long-awaited music bill. The music bill introduced tax credit, for example, the renewal of an old scheme for tax credit that will become permanent. Tax credit will be very helpful for record companies to invest into new talents. And the music bill is also aimed to increase the share of emerging talents on media. It's not really about quotas, but it's talking about the fact that new artists are traditionally prevented to be exploited on the radio, in particular, on national radio, on commercial radio. And the legislation will now try to find ways to increase the share of young artists in the radio, and in particular in radio plays, and in the most important timing of today. This is an area that is very interesting also for the recording industry. There are additional provisions for live sector. There are additional provisions for music as a whole, not only popular music, but also for the classical and lyric. And the second interesting thing that we got recently was a bonus for 18 years old teenagers. The bonus is 500 euros for buying cultural goods, and is assigned to all the people, the teenagers who become 18 years old in 2017, and this is now has been extended also for next year and 2019, and include also live concert and recorded music. So this is the scenario into where we are moving locally, and what is going on at the Commission level and European level. It's a good momentum. We will talk a little bit about this now. I hand over to Guillaume. Guillaume can also provide. France has always been very engaged in supporting music. It's probably the country where we have seen the first tax credit scheme to be introduced many years ago. France is the first country introducing language quota into radio station. Is probably one of the first country having a music export office. So Guillaume, provide us with your experience, and in particular also what you think that European Union should do in order to increase all this potential fiscal and financial aids to all the countries and all the companies around Europe.
Thank you, Enzo. Good morning. Good afternoon, sorry, everybody. Yeah, maybe before talking about France, just to come back on the Music Moves Europe program, which is the theme of the panel. I think it's a very good, of course, initiative, not really well known in France and probably elsewhere in Europe, because it demonstrates, it's an, I think, unique opportunity to demonstrate the importance and the power of our music industry, because I feel it in France, and I think that's the same in Italy and maybe in Germany. Every time we're trying to say we're working for the music industry, the main actor for any political power is first the movie industry. You know, movie industry is shining more than music industry, and in France, book industry is more powerful than the music industry. So I think it's going in the good direction. Because it has never been so easy to, I would say, for the artists and for the music, to cross border thanks to streaming. And I think this is part of the European dream. I'm not saying European dream because we now have President Macron, who believes a lot in Europe, but you know, the Europe have to be concrete. And I think with this kind of program, it's a unique opportunity how to make Europe concrete for our citizens and for people like you working in the industry. Because having an overall program which is music-centric is going really in the good direction. So we saw that now we have money for this program, but we need to have some collectively good ideas about this program, how we can give the Commission some technical ideas and good examples, because I think there is two aspects. Of course, we are talking about economic power, because we're talking about business, we're talking about industry, artists and producers and all the guys we need to earn money because of the music. But we're talking about also the other aspect is influence, soft power, and I think that's one of the reasons the European Commission must accompany the industry on that, because we are a land of diversity. You know, we're so diverse. We've got very important local repertoire in France, the same in Germany, the same in Italy, and we have to preserve, and I would say to expand this diversity. But maybe we can open a debate on that before talking about France specifically. But how can we promote? How can we have some good ideas about that? Enzo gave you a list of concrete or actions or land of actions where we could do something. And I think from my perspective, from my French perspective, we have to do something about music export office, etc. We have this kind of export office in France. What's the principle? If you have a project in France, you are a producer, you are an artist, etc., you can go and see the music export office, which is an association, and you can get public subsidies to export your to go in another country. It works, and we are pushing a lot at the moment. We just had 1 more million from the French government because of our very strong lobby in France on that. And I think having a global reflection in Europe, maybe coordinating the French Bureau Export, that's the name in France, with the future Italian Bureau Export and other, and maybe creating a new program in Europe, having the possibilities for instance, for an Italian artist, a German artist, any artist in Europe to get some money from France, but also to get some money from Europe with a specific program from the Commission saying, okay, I want to go to the US, I can get money, public money to go to the US, but I get money from the Commission. I think it's a unique opportunity and it can be useful for every single artist which want to go worldwide famous.
Okay, so Guillaume, you think the export scheme is one area that could become particularly interesting for the music industry in Europe? I agree. It's now we are in a global market, so it's very difficult to exploit artists on a global level. Not really easy. It sounds that it's streaming is providing the tools for going everywhere, but in practical way, it's still complicated. In particular, promotion is very important. We will talk tomorrow, probably in the streaming panel, about how to promote local talents abroad. Francesca, you represent Impala, and so you are very really involved into this Music Moves Europe program, because as Guillaume said, in particular, small and medium companies are really a quite great number of recording companies around Europe,
sure.
And they are traditionally investing a lot in local talent. So what is your experience, and in particular, what do you think that this program should do for small and medium record companies?
Yeah, thank you very much. The first thing I'd like to say, taking over from Jorn, is the fact that the money that will be invested by the European community in this program is money well spent, because we know that the music sector is a sector that's very healthy, and that if given a little bit of aid, can actually grow an awful lot more than what it actually does at the moment. So that's, in my opinion, is a very important consideration. We don't want to throw money at anything. You know, we just want whatever is invested to give good returns. So, as you say, ENZO, small and medium-sized companies are very many, large numbers of them, represented everywhere in Europe, and they are the ones with the greatest difficulties in actually getting access to finance. And that is a pity, because as you know, they're on the ground, and they very often are the first to spot a budding talent. So I am very pleased that this option is open to small and medium companies now with Music Moves Europe. And as well as remembering this, I would like to sort of throw in also the consideration that through the effort of Impala, for many years of work, and you know the Commission is very difficult to convince, we managed to create a fund that will guarantee the loans to small and medium companies, which means that, you know, our assets are intangible, as you know. Banks are really not inclined in giving finance to companies that deal in intangible assets. So Europe will put trust into music companies, will put trust into artists, and invest in this by guaranteeing the loans. I think this is a very important point that most companies ought to find out and test for themselves, because the barrier to growing, the barrier to growth, is access to investment money. Yes, I also looked at the list of areas in which this new initiative by the European Community will allow us to invest. And one of the ones that really caught my eye is the data, the investment on data. We are a sector, unfortunately, that has an awful lot of data, but has really not been very good at collecting it and putting it at the disposal of everyone else. So maybe this is a good idea to put the European Community, you know, fund a program that will allow us to collect our data and put it somewhere that everyone can get access to. I mean, giving access to data means that users can license music very easily and pay for it, and they will not have the, you know, the usual excuse that it's impossible to know who the owner is and so on. So that's just a thought. I don't want to drag on anymore.
Yes, this is also interesting, because the collecting part of the recording industry revenue is growing. In Italy it's at 30%. Yes. I think in France is also growing very fast. And there are a lot of areas where we can collect more money. And as you said, most of the time it depends of attributing the correct
Sure.
information to the correct
Yes.
track and provide the user with a easy way to use the music and pay the music.
For it, yeah.
That's another area interesting. Florian, so German banks will help the recording industry, or we should rely on the European? What is your experience? What do you think we should do?
I mean, I would highlight two aspects here, because I think for the last decade we saw a discussion about the whole music branch and about the professionalization of the music branch, about the data, the other data, the relevance of the branch. Like you see now at European level how many people are living from music, and it's not only music industry, it's the whole sector. And so this is something which is very helpful to show that we are a very mature branch, that we are everywhere, that we do what we can, that we did what we could over the last decade, which was very turbulent for us. And this is in a way recognizing this effort. And so if we then see where we are today, we are in a phase where Europe, and since we don't have our new chancellor, I might cite your president, he said we have to rebuild Europe by culture. And I think that's a very crucial moment to see that in Europe we are defined by our culture, and we can act, and we can redefine what we think is our culture via music in this case. And this is a very strong sign at the right moment. So yet it is a challenge, because I think we all, from industry to artists, from tech to sound studios, we have to be very creative to fill this task, and to be also in a productive competition about how to best address these issues. And for example, if you see one of your points, education is very important still. It's also about instruments. It's about the wonderful branch we are working in. It's not only about recorded, it's the music. So I think this is a very, very good sign, and not only the German banks should help. It should come from us all to show that we support this, to make the best out of it. And if we see that the money goes also to startups, yes, that's important. But I think it's also our interest that we are not only talking about the next wave of startups to whatever, to disrupt the disrupted and the disrupted. It's something where we want to be larger than that. We want to see human capital. We want to see people out there showing that we are a wonderful branch. And so the challenge will be to bring this to the next level, to be seen as a real project, and to then run for more years. And for me, if I see Music Moves Europe, for me that's like a very good claim for a new album, where I can also see the advertisement. But now we have to write the songs. We have to go in the composition. We have to fill it, and then we will see this album released, and it will be a European success.
Yes, and I think, Guillaume, you in France, you did this great effort in the past, also by involving the entire industry. Probably France was the country that was really advanced in providing a strong cooperation between the major record companies and the indie sector. Remember the work you did for the quotas or the export office. I see that now the record business, I mean the association that are behind the record business are in fact speaking with a unique voice. We can mention later a little bit about the value gap, for example, which is another area that involves the Commission, involves the Parliament and the Member States. And so do you think this unique voice it's helpful, and do you think we should do more also by involving, for example, the organization representing the artists, because sometimes they are still a little bit behind us in this process. But as Florian said, there is a a human environment where humanity is also very important, where culture is important, but also the work that is done by artists, by people who are, we are going we are going in a world where artificial intelligence will dominate everything, but probably the creative sector will still be very important, where the creativity, the human creativity will play a key role. So do you think, what we are doing, we listen, we heard a little bit about the artist also involvement in France, but I think it's another area where probably extending the unique voice in this process, music moves Europe, means music moves everything in the channel, in the area where we are working on. It's very interesting. So maybe you have some experience there.
Very large question. So yeah, talking about unity of the sector. Just a decade ago, remember, every time any one of us, anyone working for the music industry, went to see any guy from any government or any guy from the member of the parliament, it was, we have a piracy problem, we need to sue our fans. So the message was very complicated to deliver. I won't say that piracy is no more a problem, because it's still a problem. Maybe we'll come back on this later. But now we can, thanks to the perspective we are, thanks to the streaming, I don't know if it's a golden age, but I think we collectively are going to the good direction. I want to say on this point that no and never, I think we have to be all united to push for this new environment together. And I think the main issue, because we have a very tough debate in France, because we are representing producers all in our country. But in France, we have a very tough debate with performers, for instance, about sharing value, etc. But don't forget that today the main issue for all of us, if we're talking about lobbying and perspective for the future, is YouTube. And you maybe know that something is happening at the moment on the value gap, which is the word we all use to claim for more money from YouTube, because it's not normal that today, if you take an example of France, if you have a look on the global revenues coming to the industry, streaming revenues in France, you've got 10% of the revenues coming from 90% of streaming. 90% of streams come from YouTube and generate 10% of the revenue. That's in the situation, it's quite the same for any European countries, even in the US. So I think we have this is a major challenge we have all together, and maybe I will come back later on specific measures we have in France, because we don't want to be regulated, you know. That's not our DNA, I would say. But we can have sometimes some specific measure to once again accompany our industry. Music for money to export our talents, tax credit like we have in France and you're gonna have it in Italy. Maybe you know at the moment in France we have a big reflection about, because in France we know having sometimes like a big public body in charge of music industry, etc. That's an old debate. And we are having at the moment this discussion in France about maybe creating next year a big public body like the CNC, Centre National du Cinéma for the movie industry, to be able to get money from a new tax, we don't know when and how, to feed this new body. But once again, maybe to come back, I think we have to keep the three main, and I think that the corpus, I would say, of the album you describe, diversity, creativity, competitiveness. Once again, it's complementary, and we have to play with these all keywords all together.
Yeah, exactly. Francesca, you were also part of this Impala. I mean, was part of this very strong lobby that we did on the value gap issue, and is now in the perspective that you also feel that things are changing a little bit at the institutional level. As all of us probably remember, some years ago, all the institutions, in particular member of the parliament in our case, or the commission, were really focus on new technology, on digital environment, and digital companies were seen as really the next future also for Europe. Now, the creators and the industry, the old Europe is back again as a fundamental part of the cultural industry, not creative industry, but cultural industry in Europe. The numbers also from the Ernst & Young study that was done at European level, and also in Italy, CI did sponsor a very interesting study on this. We all joined this study with numbers, but it's proof that the people involved in the creation and the business behind the culture is really important. And things are changing a little bit. And you feel this?
Yes, I think so. I think they're changing radically. First of all, yes, you're right. Now the figures, as suggested by the study that you referred to just a minute ago, really show that the cultural sector is a very important sector for the national economy. So, just from that point of view, not just because we work there and we really are interested, we should really take very much care. That's, in my opinion, that's the first consideration the politicians and the lawmakers and so on should always bear in mind. The other point perhaps that I would like to make is that from that perspective, I find that now we have a united front because we have a very big problem. We have a very big problem which is represented by a sector, as you mentioned the name, so I might as well do it as well, YouTube, who are sort of hiding behind a theory or whatever that had a real value a few years ago. So there's no point in YouTube saying that nowadays they need safe harbor for doing what they do. They ought to pay as everyone else does, and have their license as everyone else does. So that's one consideration that I want to sort of bear in mind when I'm thinking about the future and when I'm thinking about the sector as a whole. We're all in it together. We need to sort of fight this battle together. And there's a very positive signal, I think. Time is on our side to a certain extent. We are going to have a board meeting next week in Brussels, and all of us, 25 people from representing most of the territories in Europe, all of us are having meetings with our European representative in Brussels about the value gap, about safe harbor, and in contrast with what happened most of the times in years, in my experience, this time they have been very receptive to our request for meetings and very interested in what we're going to say, because perhaps beyond a very easy, very emotional argument that YouTube and the other over-the-top can present, our argument is fundamentally true and easy to understand if you just pay a little bit of attention to it. So in that sense, I think we are not in a bad place at the moment, as we might have been a few years ago.
Okay, Florian, now, if you were the lobbyist for this panel, now go to the Commission, so the music is moving to Europe now. What do you will present as a position paper, taking care of what we say now to the Commission on how to move music?
I mean, I would go to the Commission and would say, you cannot start this project and leave us alone on the other side. So I think it goes together with the level playing field we need in the market and a substantial support here. So this is, for me, this is two sides of the approach, and I think that's also the sign of the Commission here, because we see that they take it serious. And so you said pretty much that we picked our fights, and I think that we should all stick to this and should not be tempted to water down these approaches, because we have to know that there will be strong uphill battles. And for example, because we all know that there are other issues, I don't know what you represent, but there are other issues in the branch. We shouldn't hide, but we will discuss these issues. But if we water down this approach, if we, for example, get confused with an additional right for remuneration for artists, it will just not come. We will end up in a situation which is maybe some watered elements, but if we don't stick to a strong approach here, we will be divided. And you know very well that there are a lot of players who would be very happy if we are divided. And that's, I think, that's the sign we should bring out, and where we also, and that's our responsibility as industry representatives, to also get trust in our positions, to get trust in the branch. And that brings in also other players, that brings in collecting societies, that brings in our strategy for the years to come. So I would go to the Commission and would pretty much say all this. But first of all, I would thank them for their effort, because that was already a lot of work they did, a lot of preparatory work. They did a lot of pre-meetings. They listened to some of us, maybe not all, but that's something which is a very strong sign. And so I would be more than happy to work on this album and to have a wonderful campaign to see this shining, to hear it, and so then we be in an even better position. But if they let us down on the other side, this thing can't fly, because the support of the branch would, in my view, be much more timid here.
Maybe adding also that we want to sell this album with a lower VAT. We maybe
that would be nice.
Could be another.
That's an idea, yes.
The Minister of Culture, Franceschini, 2 days ago, he mentioned again that we should address again the issue of VAT at European level, because it was something that we missed.
You know this funny joke in Germany. Every time we have the discussion about the reduction of VAT, you talk to cultural politicians and you say, listen, culture, can't we maybe have a reduction? And they say, oh no, it's so difficult, you know. And you say, but you know that a printed porn magazine is reducted TVA, and a classical album is not. So what is your answer to? And then they're like, yeah, it's so complicated. But still, I think that's also something we have to pick and to discuss. Maybe not now with full steam ahead, but this is something is also covering the level playing field.
Yeah, I think we have just few minutes for question from the floor. So if there is someone that want to take the opportunity to have here the bosses of Germany, France, and the representative Impala to ask a question or provide any suggestion for the program, the European program, also to how to achieve something that we have missed during this debate. So please take care, and yeah, there are the main. No question? Yes, please.
Then there is one. I can speak.
No, there is. You need this because there is a Facebook. You know, there is a value gap, but we have a Facebook.
The only question I have
streaming.
was for the representative. Hi, my name is Kees van Wey, president of Impala. My question for him would have been that this program, where we for the SMEs, so very happy with. It's only for, imagine the smaller record companies are really small. They're not a lot big companies. So if you apply for a grant in this program, you need to fill in 75 pages. You need to have your local bank, which I understand, this is logical. But on the other hand, it's so complicated. That's why we so far only have 6 granted projects so far in almost 18 months' time. And I have a panel next week with the European Commission in Amsterdam about the same subject. So we are really trying to, with the European Investment Bank, who's controlling this, to see if they can make the rules for all you, if you like to apply for one of those grants, a little bit easier. That was my statement.
Simplification also for access to the funding.
Exactly, that's the access discussion. It's not only about access to music. It's about if you want to help, then the access should be at least at a level which you can easily achieve. So I think I fully agree.
Yes, because at the end the problem is not only getting the money. For example, we have here the tax scheme, the tax credit scheme. There were in the last edition there was very few projects that have been submitted because, in fact, the bureaucracy behind it's a little bit complicated for a sector that for many years was not really involved into the development of artists through a tax credit scheme, like, for example, the movie industry. Yes, that's.
So we lack a little bit of skills, but what we lack in skills, we can make up by, using our efforts with our members or artists to bring them to the scheme. That's something that's
in fact, in Italy,
us.
we have the Credito Cinematografico, which is something that is handled by, and the same in Germany and France, is handled by specific national bank who is entitled to assign the funding and to provide the money in advance before they get the tax credit.
It would be a little different in Germany, but this is, again, this is our European identity. This is an album with not all the same tracks. We have our national differences, and it will be always like this, and it should be like this. But the idea of how to help best, this should be an overall strategy, because then we are strong, and then Europe also is strong with regards to other territories in this world where they might have another opinion of how to do how to serve a market. And we have to be sure with regards to one thing. Either there is money from investments, normal money, investment money, business money, or there is public money. There will be nothing in between. So if you want to live from music, you have to be sure where to get your money from. And if you want to have public money in terms of you want to be paid by the state, this is a totally different discussion. But if you want to have a market, you need a market which also have at least some level playing field, and that's what we are fighting for.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks, Florian.
Thank you,
Guillaume,
Enzo.
any final remarks, or fine?
I'm fine, I think. I think you guess that we are all in the same boat, pushing to be concrete, to get more money for YouTube altogether. I don't want to push again, but YouTube is a partner. I mean, I guess there is artists in the room, so we have to make deals with YouTube. But once again, it's the most popular platform in the world. And when I see a French actor like Deezer, who is competing not on the same field, that's not fair for tech companies like Deezer or for Spotify. So it's the question of the market we want.
I read yesterday someone saying instead of funding a new startup, Google maybe should be addressed better the fair remuneration of artists on YouTube. That is the final remarks. Probably is really a nice joke, but it's useful for us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for being here, and
thank you.
Yeah.